I'm Shelley Bugler.
Shelley,
I'm Debbie Brickla.
Shelley and Debbie Vicky. And Vicky. This is Joyce. And
Dan.
Dan. I'm sorry, I just
Oh, I
like
know.
that. Okay, well, I'm going to try and remember your names. But first of all, thank you for coming tonight, and I'm excited to share with you just a little bit about how I got introduced to this product, and what it's done for me, and why I'm really excited about sharing it with people. I'm from Cedar City, Utah originally, so I grew up there, and about 2 years ago moved to Boise, Idaho. I love it up there. I'm actually in Meridian, if you're familiar at all with Idaho. But most people have never heard of Meridian, and everybody's heard of Boise, so.
Next to Napa.
What's that?
Next to Napa, fresh.
Yeah, exactly. So, I love Idaho. I also love Southern Utah. My family's all still, a lot of my family's still down there in Southern Utah. And so it's fun to be back here. But about 6 years ago, I was introduced to a great health supplement product that I kind of fell in love with and shared it with people, and a lot of people had really great results. And I started kind of traveling all over the world sharing this product with people, and awesome things were happening in people's lives, and I was having a lot of fun. And I love this profession. And so 2 years ago, though, off and on my entire life, I've dealt with symptoms of anxiety and depression. At 4 years old, I have bleeding ulcers. So I was in and out of the hospital growing up as a child. They were always trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And the psychologist would always say, seems like a healthy, normal child, there's got to be something physically wrong. So they would send me to the doctors, and the doctors would admit me and run all these tests and put me on medications. And they would say, he's not responding to the medication, so it has to be emotional. So they would send me back to the psychologist, and I kind of just got ping-pong back and forth, all the way until 8th grade. And in 8th grade, I went to Primary Children's Hospital, and they stuck a tube up my nose and down in my stomach to measure my stomach acid so they could try and figure out what was going on. And I was there for 4 days. And I shared a room with a little boy that had water on the brain. And he had this metal plate screwed into the back of his skull right here, and a tube that went into his brain. And about every 3 or 4 hours in a day, he would wake up screaming bloody murder, right? It just sounded like someone was killing him. And the nurses and doctors would all run in, and they would adjust whatever they had to adjust to make him comfortable, and then he would go back to sleep. And I remember sitting over there thinking, look, I live a normal life. I don't belong here. You know, he belongs here. He's got real challenges and problems. So I remember going home that day and telling my mom in the car ride home, look, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't want any medication. Because I had really bad, like heartburn, I had really bad hiatal hernia, so sometimes it was hard to swallow. But it was all livable stuff. It was just uncomfortable. And so I decided I don't want to do this anymore at all. And my mom started working with natural products and herbs. And we worked with I don't know what you'd classify them as, but a doctor that was basically just worked with herbal remedies. And using different techniques and strategies, was able to live a really comfortable, normal life. Really got it under control for the most part. I had to be careful what I ate, and I had certain different supplements that I would take, but lived very comfortable and normal. And so I found a product 6 years ago that really, really helped me, and that helped me with some of those issues that I loved taking, but I still had depression and anxiety that would kind of come and go. And when I would get depressed, it's only happened a few times in my life, but when I get depressed, I would get really, really depressed. And to the point where just all day, every day, I would just obsess with just wanting to be not here anymore. And I was never suicidal or planned to kill myself, but I just didn't want to live. So from the time I'd wake up in the morning till I went to bed at night, all I could think about is, why can't I die today? And I remember having days where I would literally pray, like, somebody has to die in a car crash today, let it be me, because I'm just done being here. And so 2 different times in my life I've gone on antidepressants to try and control that. And while they did help to get rid of the deep depression, I didn't like the effects of them. And so there were two instances or experiences I had that really made me feel like I don't want to be on these drugs. One was my grandmother died, and I was actually working in St. George, and my mom called me and said, Grandma just had a massive heart attack, and if you want to say goodbye, you need to get here quick. And so I got my car and I was driving up to Cedar City, and as I went up to Black Ridge, I remember trying to force myself to cry because I knew I should be sad. But I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel anything. I just felt numb. And I thought, I really want to grieve. You know, it was a funny thing because logically I wanted to feel emotional, right? But I didn't feel any emotion at all. And so I thought, man, that can't be a healthy way to live. The other thing that happened, my oldest son started to take his first steps. And I remember sitting on the couch watching him walk and just thinking, oh, look, he's walking. And I remember feeling like you should be excited. You should want to take a picture. This is a great day. But I didn't feel any of that. I was just like, oh, good, he's walking, big deal. And so I thought, I've got to get off this medication because I don't like just not having any emotion or any feeling at all. And so I worked with a psychologist for about 2 years, and he really helped me get off the medication, but be able to deal with the depression in a healthy way. And life was pretty good for about 8 years. And then, 2 years ago, for whatever reason, I ended up in a really bad place again, where I was just really depressed all the time. And I called Dr. Sid and I said, I need some help, I need some meds. And he said, well, we worked so hard to get you off the medication. Why do you want to go on them again? I said, I don't want to go on them, but here's how I'm feeling, and I'm scaring myself. And I know I have a lot to live for. I've got a beautiful, amazing wife. I've got beautiful, healthy children. And I shouldn't be sad like I am, but I can't shake it. It's just obsessive all day, every day. And so he asked me, he said, have you ever heard of a company called True Hope out of Canada? And I said, no. And he said, I want you to go to their website, and I want you to buy this product, Empower Plus. And he said, it's all natural, it's vitamins, it's minerals, and there's no side effects whatsoever. And he said, I'm actually recommending this before any medication to all my patients, no matter what they're dealing with. Now, at the time, Sid was the president of the Utah Psychological Association, so he's a well-known, good, doctor. He'd also been a doctor for the Army in Germany and helped all the soldiers coming in and out of Iraq with PTSD. And he said, go buy this and use that. And if you don't like the results, call me and we'll look at a drug again, but let's use that as the last defense, not the first. And so I said, okay, great, I'll buy some. When I was having this conversation, I was actually driving from Las Vegas to Cedar City. So you would think when I would get home, the first thing I'd do is go online and order the product, right? But I didn't. Why? Because people with anxiety and depression never follow through, right? It's just a trait of those, or a symptom of those disorders, is it's hard to follow through on things. So a month later, I still hadn't ordered this supplement at all. And a good friend of mine called me, and he said, he kind of knew what I was dealing with. And he said, Joe, have you ever heard of this company, True Hope, out of Canada? And I said, you know what, Dr. Sid told me I should order that. I'm going to do it right now while I'm talking to you on the phone. And he said, no, don't worry about it. I'll ship you some samples. And he shipped me some little boxes, week supply. I think he shipped me 3 or 4 of those. And I started taking this supplement about 2 years ago, twice a day, and within a week, that obsessive thoughts of not wanting to be here anymore went away. And my depression's been kept intact for the last 2 years. So I fell in love with this product 2 years ago, and I started using it. But my friend that sent me the free samples, he was really excited because he knew that what I did for a living was work with a network marketing company. And so he thought, wow, this is a brand new network marketing company, and if I get Joe, he'll go sell people all over the world, and it'll be great, and we'll make a lot of money. So he kept calling me saying, hey, let's do this business, you need to switch. But I was making a great income working with another company that had a product that I loved. And I said, look, it's just, I'm not interested in that, but I'll consume the product. And so over the last 2 years, I've used the product. But last October, everything kind of changed for me, because over the last 2 years, I've referred many, many people, friends of mine, that were dealing with similar issues with anxiety or depression, or they had kids that were dealing with ADHD, and I would refer them to this product, and I heard amazing things that it was doing for a lot of different people. But in October of last year, the company that I've been working for a long time kind of shifted directions, and they decided that they wanted to be the next healthy coffee company. And I don't drink coffee, and it's hard for me to sell anything that I don't believe in or consume myself. And so I started looking more at coming to work with Q Sciences, and so last October I switched and started to promote the Q Sciences product line. And it's been an amazing 4 or 5 months, because what I found is that these issues of stress, anxiety, depression, ADHD are impacting more and more people. And you know, they say 1 in 3 Americans right now are dealing with symptoms of anxiety. Now, so that means, you know, in this room, there's 3 or 4 that are dealing with some pretty pronounced symptoms of anxiety. Now, the amazing thing is this, it shifts all the time, right? So some of you might be sitting there saying, I don't deal with any anxiety. Well, just wait your turn, because life has a way of mixing it up a little bit, right? So people who say, well, I don't deal with anxiety, I don't deal with depression, they're normal emotional states, right, that happen. Well, what we found and learned over time is that as our soils get depleted of the minerals, then there's a direct link between mineral deficiency in our diet and mental illness. So if you look, you can go to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's website and pull up a chart that shows the decline in the mineral content in our soils because of the way we grow and process our foods now. And the rise of mental illness, and I'm not talking like bipolar schizophrenia, I'm just talking anxiety, depression, ADHD. The rise in mental illness is almost exactly the same percentage as the decrease in minerals in our soil. So it's a pretty interesting thing to look at. Well, 18 years ago, there was a gentleman in southern Alberta, Canada, named Tony Stephan, that was a property manager. He just managed buildings. He managed a lot of church buildings and a lot of government buildings and mostly big commercial built real estate that he was in charge of managing. And he had 9 kids, and he had a wife that was dealing with bipolar, rapid cycling, bipolar affective 1 disorder. And they tried to get her help, and she was on different medications, and she ended up sadly in 1994 committing suicide. And at her funeral, her husband found out that her father, 18 years early, had also committed suicide. And the mother had kind of hidden it, didn't want the family to know it was suicide. So she always said he died of a heart attack, which was partially true, but it was a heart attack because of overdosing on meds. So he had 9 children. So here he is, a single dad with 9 kids. And at the time of his wife's death, his daughter Autumn and his son Joseph both had serious bipolar disorder as well, just like their mother. He goes through all the other kids, and I can't even remember all the issues they had, but it was a family of a lot of mental illness issues that they were dealing with. And Tony said it felt like an A-bomb went off in my living room. You know, you're supposed to have this nice little family, and it was just everywhere I turned, it was a mess. And it got worse. A little while after the mom died, Autumn had her first child, a little boy, and the postpartum depression sent her cycling into a really bad place where she was in and out of mental institutions on 5 different medications. Young Joseph, at 14 years old, had already been brought up on federal weapons charges in Canada, very violent kid. He would take guns and knives and stockpile them, and he always thought the government was coming to get him. And almost on a nightly basis, he would threaten the family as they were going to bed that he was going to kill them all in their sleep, and he was going to start the house on fire and burn them all alive. And I mean, really serious mental challenges. And they would have, he was on a maximum dose of lithium, and he would get in this angry rage, and it would take the whole family piling on top of him and forcing lithium into his mouth and holding his jaw shut to get him to relax and calm down. So it's like the worst kind of issues you could be dealing with. Far different than mine, right? I just didn't really want to live that much. I wasn't trying to kill my family or anything like that. But Tony's wife, he had remarried, and his new wife got an appointment to go see the head psychiatrist in Calgary. And so it was about a 3-hour drive. Now the appointment was 3 months away. So you can imagine this family for 3 months thinking, you know, we're finally going to get help. We're finally going to find out what we can do for Joseph and how we can help him and how we can be a normal family. Well, the day comes, they drive all the way into Calgary, and they go into this appointment, and the psychiatrist says, look, I'm familiar with this. I see it all day, every day. We're doing everything we can for Joseph. There's nothing else that can be done. I've read his file. I've seen the medication. I know what they're doing, and there's nothing else we can do. And Tony got a little belligerent and said, look, there's got to be something you can do. You can't just send us home and say this is life. And so she invited Barbara and Joseph to go out into the hall and asked Barbara to close the door when they left. And then she explained to Tony, look, your expectations are just way out of line. The reality is this is a recurring disorder, which means if anything, it's only going to get worse. It doesn't get any better. And there's nothing we can do. And you need to go home and realize that there's a very good chance that Joseph and Autumn are going to spend the rest of their lives in mental institutions. And there's a very high percentage that they're going to end up just like their mother and take their own lives in the future. And there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing we can do about it. So you just need to go home and prepare yourself. And Tony said, as I was driving home, that 3-hour drive, for about the first hour and a half, I was just angry. Right? I wanted to go back and give that person a piece of my mind and tell them what I thought. And then he said it hit me like a ton of bricks that they were just being honest with me. The reality was no one knew anything to do that would help, that would make any kind of difference. But he had this belief that his kids could be 100% better, and that's what he wanted, was for them to live normal lives. And so he started reading everything he could find on bipolar disorder. And he started studying and listening and talking to anyone that would share with him experiences about bipolar. And over the course of about 2 years, he got bits and pieces of information that led him to believe that it could be a problem with nutrition. And that if he could get his kids the proper nutrition and feed their brains the minerals that they needed, that there's a chance that it could help and it could make a difference. And 18 years ago, he formulated this product called Empower Plus with the mission of saving his kids. Right? He was a property manager. He wasn't a supplement salesman. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't a psychologist. He was a desperate father fighting to save his kids' lives. And he formulated this product and started giving it to them 18 years ago. And within a few months, Autumn was released from the mental institution into their care. They took her off all 5 of her medications, started using this, and she's lived a perfectly normal life for the past 18 years. she went home. At the mental institution, they were trying to talk her and her husband Dana into having her sterilized so that she couldn't have her kids. Because they said not only would it not be safe for her, but it wouldn't be safe for her to parent any children. There was no hope of a good life for kids. After going on this supplement and off all her meds, she had 3 other daughters, beautiful little girls. They all live in Meridian, Idaho, happily married, living a totally normal, functional life for the last 18 years. Young Joseph, the violent kid that had been brought up on weapons charges and threatened to kill everybody, he now has 6 children, 2 sets of twins, and for 18 years he's used no medication other than this supplement as well. So he's had a perfectly normal, healthy life. He's happily married. So a miracle really happened in Tony's family. Now early on, you can imagine, they grew up in a little town of about 3,000 people. So you can imagine the whole town knows what's going on in the Steppen household, right? They know how crazy Joseph is. They know Autumn's in and out of a psych ward because it's small town Canada, right? And everybody knows everybody else's business. Well, Kim Forrest always tells me, he says, you know, you can't hide crazy. When someone's crazy, everyone around them knows, right? But you also can't hide uncrazy. So if someone's been crazy for a while and all of a sudden they're better, everybody knows. They're like, what happened to Joseph? So when Joseph got better all of a sudden and turned into a model student at school, it actually started with the principal at the school telling other parents, look, I don't know what you're dealing with, but you should call Tony because his son was way worse than yours, and now he's doing great. So people started calling Tony and saying, hey, can we get some of whatever you're giving your kids? And he started giving people product, and word spread like crazy all over Canada. Pretty soon there were 5,000 people across Canada that were using this supplement to deal with all kinds of different issues that they were having. And they actually got a grant from the Alberta, how are you? The Alberta government issued a grant to the University of Calgary to do a study on this supplement. It was $500,000 to do a double-blind placebo-controlled study. So the news came out. They said, hey, we understand you're going to do this study. And they were interviewing the researcher at the university, and they were interviewing Tony, and they said, we understand you've created a supplement that helps people with bipolar. And he said, yeah, my kids are doing amazing. You wouldn't believe it. And that aired, and the next morning, Health Canada, which is like our FDA, called him and said, we understand you've created this supplement that helps with bipolar. And he said, yeah, you should see my kids. And they said, you're going to stop making it and stop selling it and pretend it never existed. And he said, you don't understand, my kids will die if I do that. And they said, we don't really care. You're going to stop because you're selling a drug illegally. He said, well, it's not a drug, it's just vitamins and minerals. Well, in Canada, they had this statute that said if something helped bipolar, it was a drug. It doesn't matter if it's water or bread, or if it helps bipolar, then it's a drug. You couldn't make a claim like that. So they told him he had to stop, and he did what any sane father would do, and he just ignored it, right? Because he wanted to save his kids. So then they sent him a cease and desist order, which is a letter that says, if you make or sell this, where there's going to be a fine and jail time for every bottle. Well, by this time, they have thousands and thousands of people in Canada that were suicidal that are now totally fine. And so Tony just threw the letter away and he kept on going, right? Which I think he was bipolar at that point. Yeah. So then cease and desist letter 2 came, and then 3, and then 4, and then they showed up with machine guns and took him and his partner into custody and arrested him. And they raided his facility. You could read about all of this online, right? And so they shut them down. And then it went all the way, the court case went all the way to the Canadian Supreme Court. Well, in the meantime, it was working so well that someone got a hold of a researcher at Harvard University. And he was the dean of psychopharmacology. His name's Dr. Charles Popper. And they said, we've got this amazing supplement, it helps with bipolar, it does all these amazing things. And we said, there's no way, that's impossible. you know, the best drugs on the planet don't help 70% of the time, which is what they were claiming this would do with bipolar. So they kept pestering him, and finally he said, look, I'll do a little study. So he did a study on 22 bipolar patients, and I think it was 60 days, it might have been 30. But in a short period of time, 19 out of 22 showed significant improvement, more than they would have expected with any drug. You can read that study as well. So at the Supreme Court case, here's Dr. Charles Popper, Dean of Psychopharmacology, the person in charge of psychotropic drugs at Harvard University, shows up to testify in favor of Empower Plus. And on top of that, they had petitions signed by over 5,000 people that wrote in to tell the court, this product changed our life and we need access to it. And unfortunately, there were a few cases of people that had been suicidal, started using this product, became unsuicidal, were doing great, working jobs, living life normal, and when the government stopped all the shipments, they ended up committing suicide. So a Canadian judge rules in favor of Empower Plus and says, look, he looked at Tony and he said not only, he ruled that Health Canada had to leave him alone, he also ruled that Health Canada had to give them a drug number as if it was a licensed drug, even though it's a number, just a supplement. And he looked at Tony and said, and you're not allowed to ever stop making this because it's changing lives, it's making a difference. And he said, in fact, if you ever just choose to go out of business because you don't want to do this anymore, I'll hold you in contempt of court myself and put you in jail. So Tony's under this edict that he can't go out of business. He has to make this for the rest of his life. And so that's really where our story started. Now the amazing thing was, it'd be a cute little bedtime story if it happened yesterday, right? But that happened 18 years ago. So for the last 18 years, they've been selling this product on a website out of Canada. And in that 18 years' time, they sold over 5 million bottles of this product. And it's been shipped over 100 countries around the world. And you can go to True Hope's website today, and they have little boxes, and you can click on ADHD, stress, PTSD, bipolar, schizophrenia, autism, sleeping disorders, the list goes on and on. And it'll pull up research studies that have been done that prove that this is effective in helping people that are dealing with all kinds of disorders. And it's pretty amazing the actual scientific research around this product. But it all started because when the Dean of Psychopharmacology from Harvard University says this works, and he called this a historically pivotal and I'm going to say project, but that's not the word he used. But finding, because he said what it really does is it makes us reanalyze the way we've thought of mental illness for decades, right? Because we always thought, well, there's some chemical imbalance, there's something wrong with the brain that we have to fix. And this working on so many different things really says that people just aren't getting the proper nutrition into the brain. And if they get the proper nutrition, a lot of these disorders can go away. Now, is it a magic pill that's going to cure everything? Absolutely not. But when you can put 4 pills a day in somebody's hands and it changes their life the way it did mine and the way it has thousands and thousands of other people, it's an absolute miracle for the people that it works for. So what happened was, they started selling it. They're selling more and more every year. More and more lives are impacted every year. But the mental illness is rising at a faster pace than they're getting this product out to people, right? So overall, they're making less and less of an impact as the years went by. And it drove Tony nuts. He said, we've got to find a way to educate more and more people about the power of micronutrients and how they can help feed the brain and how these symptoms and issues can go away in people's lives. And so that became really his life passion and his life's work. And he hired a man named Scott Malone to actually get this product into major retail outlets like Walgreens and CVS and Walmart and Costco and wherever. And he said, look, I want this to be a mainstream product. And we have 26 third-party independent clinical studies. We have the studies from Harvard, we have studies from the University of Calgary, Ohio State, Canterbury University, and Christchurch, New Zealand. Researchers all around the world are studying this exact formula. Not an ingredient or that's in our pill, but that actual formula they're using in conducting all these studies, and they're all coming back with the same thing, that it's working, it's making a difference. So he thought if we could show this data to the Walmart and the CVS, they would love it. Right? So Scott spent about a year, he got in front of over 30 different buyers from these major chains, and not one of them would agree to carry the product. Because they said, look, all it really is at the end of the day, it's a multivitamin, multi-mineral. So if we put that on the shelf next to Centrum, Centrum's a fourth the cost, nobody's going to buy that because they won't understand what it actually is. Well, Scott had made a lot of money in his life with a company called New Skin out of Provo, Utah, that many of you might have heard of. And he worked with them and built a huge organization all around the world. And so he called Tony and he said, listen, or he didn't call him, he emailed him. He said, Tony, this isn't working. None of these stores want to carry it. But there's a way we can market this. We could just have people share with people, which is how they had grown the business really to that point, right? I would take the product, tell my friends, and they would go to the website and buy it. And that's how they sold 5 million bottles over 16 years. He said, look, if we just incentivize people, either gave them free product or allowed them to make some money, they would be even more excited about sharing it with their friends and family. And Tony replied with one word in great big letters that just said no, right? Because he didn't like the network marketing world. He said, look, this product saved my kids' lives. And my goal, my mission is to save lives, to make a difference. And what I know of network marketing, it's about, you know, fancy cars and big houses, and I don't want this product to be a part of just a big money game for people. And so Scott said, okay, and he kept talking to these retailers, and they kept telling him no and closing the door in his face. And so months later, he went back to Tony and he said, look, here's why I think you ought to consider network marketing, and told him again. And Tony replied a little bit more open-minded because he could see they weren't going to get it in the stores. And he said, look, if we could find the right people to partner with, I would want to work with certain owners that their mission and their goal was truly to help people first and make money second. And if we could find the right people to work with, then maybe I would do it. And he set this big criteria of he said, if you can find me someone like this, then I'll work with them. So Scott called a guy that he knew of named Darren Hogue in Alpine, Utah, who had retired. But before he retired, Darren ran Nature Sunshine, a company you might have heard of. They did about $300 million in sales when Darren was a CEO. He ran another company called Synergy Worldwide that had done over $150 million a year in sales. And he started another company called Genesis Pure that did about $115 million a year in sales. So he had built